Hi, my name is Korame, and this is going to be my guide for 10.1 Preservation Evoker in Aberrus the Shadow Crucible. If you don't know who I am, I raid in Vesper on Area 52. We got World 26, I believe, last year. Last year I was also playing Preservation Evoker, and this year I'm also playing a Preservation Evoker. While I'm making this video right now, we are 7 out of 9 Mythic, though by the time I post this, hopefully there will be, we will have gotten another kill, we'll see though. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you guys first about like your loadout, like your setup, like your stats, the trinkets you want, embellishments you want, different talent setups and stuff like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about like CDs and then bring you through some footage of gameplay. And the entire time I'm here, my cat is going to be joining me. If you've been here before, you know he's going to be here the whole time. Okay, so to get things started, I'm going to talk about stats first. So last year, there was like a good mix of like you wanted mastery, then you wanted crit, and then crit would kind of overtake mastery because for every single point of crit you got, the next point of crit got more valuable for your reversion healing. However, our healing in 10.1 is no longer leaning into reversion anymore. So therefore, critical strike does lose quite a bit of value compared to how it was before. Mastery is now your best stat. Now that doesn't mean crit isn't good. Like crit is still a valuable stat. It's your second most valuable stat. And with a talent called, I shouldn't say call, I can just show you it. With Exhilarating Burst, this is going to have great synergy with our foresight, which I'll get into later. So Mastery, then Crit, and then Burst and Haste are both kind of okay. The main thing that you're looking for is mostly Heavy Mastery, and then I'm kind of going for Crit, and like Burst and Haste I kind of see as being equal. There are some builds I'm going to show you later where Haste is actually going to gain a lot more value. And then as far as your embellishments go, right now I'm wearing the Venom Steam Stompers. And I'm also wearing the bracers. These bracers recently got hotfixed, so they're working a lot better. So these are actually now your best embellishment. However, this isn't always the first thing you want to craft because bracers are a pretty low value slot. Boots also aren't that great. You can maybe do boots as your first and then do your second as toxic patch. That's what I had before this week. You also want to maybe consider just crafting a weapon. Although the best embellishment you can put on a weapon is usually the healing darts, which aren't that good for us. So you maybe want to consider not making this your first craft if you don't have an embellishment, if you don't have extra sparks or any embellishments yet. The cloak that you can get is also really good. They also recently hotfixed that. There's been a lot of hotfixes the weeks that I am recording this. The cloak gives you a shield. It's really high like value just for like your own survivability and stuff. But as far as like healing numbers go, the two best embellishments are the boots and the bracers. So that's why I have those. I already had an upgraded weapon and I'm still hoping to get that Evoker legendary to drop, of course. So I decided to hold out on crafting weapon this week instead of just keeping my toxic patch. Kind of a gamble and didn't really pay off, but here we are. Okay, so outside of that, of course, I'm wearing my foresight. So the foresight is, like I said, going to change our playstyle if you played last year. If you didn't play last year, that's fine. All it means is that our Spirit Bloom and Dream Breath is going to be a lot of our healing. Let's see if I have a recent breakdown. Okay, I have Magmarax kill here still. So you can see that Spirit Bloom is going to be at the top, and then Dream Breath is going to be second. So those are where the majority of your healing is going to be coming from. Is from that Spirit Bloom and Dream Breath, and that's due to your new 2 set. And then the foresight is giving you extra essence. It's just kind of a nice bonus, especially if you want to play the Emerald Blossom build, which I will also talk about in a second with talents. Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about is trinkets before I jump right into talents. So the absolute best trinket that every single healer wants this tier is the Rashok's Molten Heart. So I don't have one. That's fine. But even if like when they release LFR and this trinket comes out, this trinket on LFR is better than any mythic trinket you can get in the game. That is how powerful it is. So do your very best to get this trinket if you can. The next best trinket you want to look for inside the raid is off Kazara. I do have this one now. I just got it this week, the Screaming Black Dragon Scale. And then our class trinket is actually not too bad compared to how the class trinket is for some other people. Here it is. I have been using it this week as well because nobody else wanted it. The nice thing is if it drops is that nobody else on this token wants this trinket because it's pretty bad for everyone. So if it drops, there's actually a pretty good chance that you could get this trinket in your raid, and it drops in Heroic at item level 444, which is only 3 eye levels behind my mythic trinket, and I didn't have to spend anything to upgrade it. So it's pretty nice if you need your hands on that one. But again, you would ideally have the Rashok one. As far as like the ones for outside, like in dungeons, the only one that's like of any note is the one that's in Vortex Pinnacle, and even then it's not very good. So you really just want to be trying your best to get the trinkets out of the raid if you can. And then also this ring is still going to be your best bet with this setup. The Wild Spirit Stone, the Exuding Steam Stone, and the Deluging Water Stone. You can also run this other setup. I have 2 different rings with 2 different setups for this reason. This setup is purely healing. This one is a mix of healing and damage, and this is a pretty nice combination. It's Prophetic Twilight Stone, Humming Arcane Stone, and Exuding Steam Stone. So you're still getting some healing out of the Steam Stone, but you're doing pretty good damage with this ring on top of that. So if you want like a mix of damage and healing for raid, I would suggest this combination. And then for Mythic Plus, it's going to be a different combination, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video because this is our raid video. Okay, on to talents. So this is going to be what I would say is your most generic setup. So the idea here is that you are putting out echoes, and the echoes are mostly being put out by Resonating Sphere. So when you cast TA, it puts out 5 echoes, and then you're using those echoes to either duplicate Spirit Bloom or Dream Breath. For that reason, and like I said, a lot of our healing is Spirit Bloom. You do want to take 20-second Spirit Bloom for most fights. There are some fights like Siskarn where you don't really get a lot of value out of taking 20-second Spirit Bloom because of the timings. It just depends on the timings of the fight. But for most fights, you are going to want this. And then you have an extra point here, which you can put into Exhilarating Burst, or you can put over here into Flow State. Both are good. So Exhilarating Burst got a tiny bit of a, not a buff, but because of our foreset, you get a lot more uptime on Exhilarating Burst now. So it is a really valued talent to take. And like I said, if you have enough crit, then it's pretty good. And then Flow State can be really good if you need your spells to come up faster. Like if there's just like constant HPS using things on CD, or like things are just like a tiny bit off like on their CD and stuff like that. And that's where Flow State can definitely help you out, and so you want to consider taking it then. I end up switching this point around a lot just depending on the timings of the fight. If I need this for timings, I take this. If I don't need it and it's just like really easy timings, then I definitely go over and put a point in Exhilarating Burst. You do want to make sure that you're taking Font of Magic now. This wasn't always a thing that you were taking before, but now since we're leaning so heavily into Spirit Bloom healing, you're going to do extra healing when you take Font of Magic because it gets an extra in power level, so you want to make sure you're always taking Font of Magic. Always going down to Dreamflight. You can get to Dreamflight by either taking Ouroboros or Spark of Insight, even Power Nexus, but that's going to be a different build. But mostly for this build, you're going to want to take Ouroboros or Spark of Insight. So Ouroboros, you normally don't cast a lot of Emerald Blossoms, but I can show you again in this. So here I cast Emerald Blossom 8 times, and it did 2.5 million healing. And that's because I am actually casting Hard Echoes, and then when I have the ability to, like, so it's like a 6-minute fight, and I only cast Emerald Blossom 8 times, so it's not really a lot. I'm getting really good value out of this talent. Spark of Insight was the go-to before, but since you have so much essence now, like essence burst basically from your foreset, I don't always find myself getting great value out of this. I'd rather have the little bit of extra healing out of Ouroboros when I need it. And then of course we love taking Dreamflight. You no longer take the time to go into Grace Period, and then you do still want Stasis in this build. You do not always have to take 3-minute rewind if the timings don't need it, so that you can go over here into Energy Loop and use the extra essence you have to gain back mana. And if you don't need either of these things, you can just put in Time of Need, which is like it's just like an okay button to press. It's not like the most, I mean, not to press, but to have. Not the most amazing thing. But yeah, that's your generic this side. And then over here, you just mostly want to make sure that you have Source of Magic for your healers. Your other healers are going to love that. At the end of the day, getting all of your healers is really important. Please take Source of Magic. Rescue, Time Spiral, Zephyr if you need it. Lush Growth. If you're taking Ouroboros, absolutely make sure that you're putting 1 point into Bountiful Bloom here. That's really good value. They also reworked Ancient Flame, and I highly suggest, this is something I forget to take pretty often, but I'm trying to get better at remembering to take it, because you no longer get your instant cast Living Flames. So if you're fire breathing pretty often to get your 4 set procs and just to do damage. So Ancient Flame, reducing the casting of your Living Flame, is actually going to make the class feel a lot better to play than having to sit there and hard cast Living Flames all the time. So if you can, I would try and take this one too. So this is your most generic build. Right here. I'll set it back. This is your most generic build. There is another build that I can recommend for certain fights, and that is a Emerald Blossom build. Cats go crazy. So this is the Emerald Blossom build, and the main idea behind this build is that you're going to be casting Living Flame quite a bit, like as a damaging spell, and that's going to be like you're going to be fishing for Essence Burst procs, and then you're basically just going to be pressing Emerald Blossom on CD and just getting a bunch of Cycle of Life procs the entire time. Like you're gonna have multiple Cycle of Lives all the time, which just be pressing on CD. You're gonna be getting so many Essence Bursts just because you're casting Living Flame. And of course you are casting like you're casting Spirit Bloom, you're casting Dream Breath, and then like whenever you don't have Spirit Bloom or Dream Breath and you don't have enough Essence to press Emerald Blossom, you're just Living Flame. And the nice thing about this build is that you can do a lot of damage in it, and right now Evoker is really behind in rate on damage. So if you can run this on like a super stacked fight, I highly suggest that you do. Word of caution though, there are only 2 stacked fights where this is probably going to be very good for you, and that's going to be Rashok and Magmarax. And Rashok works well. Magmarax right now, at the time I'm recording this video, I'll have another video on Magmarax as well later. Cycle of Life currently is broken on that, so I would not suggest my Magmarax, the breakdown I'm showing you, I'm not running this build even though I want to run this build, but you can't run it because Cycle of Life is broken specifically on Magmarax and it won't work. And this build just does not do a lot of healing without Cycle of Life, so I wouldn't suggest it then. But yeah, 2 main builds. There's be some other builds that come up, but those are like the 2 that I'm willing to recommend right now to you. Okay, and then I'm going to talk a tiny bit about CDs because these are the common questions that I always get. What do you put in your stasis is always the absolute biggest one. And we're going to watch a tiny bit of gameplay, but before I do that, I'll get into it. So mainly in my stasis, I just want to make sure I have at least 2 things. 1, TA. 2, a Spirit Bloom or a Dream Breath. And then that third slot does not matter to me as much. Now, that being said, sometimes it's just like I pre-VE, and then it's TA, Dream Breath, Emerald Blossom. Sometimes it's TA, I hard cast an Echo on someone, Dream Breath, or sometimes it's TA, Spirit Bloom, and I have Dream Breath up. So sometimes it is like Spirit Bloom and Dream Breath. It really just depends on the timings of the fight. It depends on like how quickly I need to get my stasis on CD to get it back somewhere, if I'm willing to wait, if there's any healing that needs to be done, if I'm willing to just sit on my hands and like just wait for that next spell to come up, or if they're both up right there at the same time just because there's not much else going on. It is so dependent on the timings of the fight and what is needed, and you're going to learn that as you keep pulling a boss, like especially like a hard boss that needs like good prog and stuff like that. So those are the only rules I have for you. At least try and get in this like generic build 1 TA and either Spirit Bloom or Dream Breath. If you can get both, great, but don't lose healing and let people die elsewhere because you're holding on to your spells and letting them sit off CD just to get a good stasis type of thing. And then you'll learn beyond that. As far as Emerald Communion goes, Emerald Communion is not the CD that it used to be because our Lifebind is now nerfed inside a Resonating Sphere. If you played before, that got nerfed in 10.07. So it is still a good like thing to set up, but it's not nearly as powerful as it used to be. I do still suggest you do it. In the Emerald Blossom build, I don't suggest you try and do it. I really suggest you just only use all of your essence on blossoms, and then you basically just use Emerald Communion as a defensive / mana regen / maybe you Lifebind 1 person. But inside of this build, you can still try and set something up. Most of the time I try and set one up early with the stasis, and then my later ones are going to be a little bit weaker. But it's still like a really nice button for like getting health back, getting mana back, easy free healing. Really, like mana regen is pretty important in this build as well, since you don't always get to use your essence for disintegrate as much as you were before. And then the other CDs are pretty straightforward. Rewind, just make sure you're using it somewhere that you're taking lots of damage. Like Rashok, don't get baited into using it on the healing absorbs because that's not always like the true damage that you're taking. Another word of note while I'm on the healing absorbs, yes, Lifebind does still bug with healing absorbs the same way it did on Razagath. So that is another fun thing to note on top of the other bugs that I've already been talking about. And yeah, so I think we're ready for the most part to get into just some gameplay. I can just show you guys how we are playing this tier. This is just going to be a gameplay example I'm going to show you right now. This is on Magmarax. We're about 3 minutes into the poll. So on this poll, I'm basically using all of my CDs on CD because it's a high HPS required boss. Like it's non-stop healing, just to give you an idea. So right now I have Dreamflight coming up, Stasis coming up in 30 seconds. I have Tip the Scales up, and I have 3 stacks of Aberrus, just to give you like kind of like an oriented idea of where we're standing right now. Right now he's doing the Overpowering Stomp, which is the knockback. So this is where I'm going to rescue our priest. And I've also, I'm not going to rescue my priest, and I'm going to Tip the Scales of Spirit Bloom. Sorry, I just picked a random poll. And then as you can see, I just VE'd, so I have my Call of Viscera buff, and then I'm going to TA. And then I'm going to put out my Dream Breath, so I just TA'd my Dream Breath. And then right now I'm probably just going to be prepping Echoes for my next Spirit Bloom. And so the biggest problem with this kind of build is you do end up sitting on your hands a lot. Like it's a lot of like, I am pressing Echo, I am pressing T, I'm doing whatever, Spirit Bloom's up, okay, press Spirit Bloom. Then I go back to pressing Echo and doing whatever for the Dream Breath, and then back to the next Spirit Bloom and like things like that. It's just like a lot of cycling, and the things in between that kind of are like the breaks in between that are the things like your Rewind, your Dream Flight, pressing Aberrus. Of course, you want to make sure that when you press the Emerald Blossom, you don't have any of your Echoes out. Like your Echo, like you, the only time you want to like use Echo for Lifebind, meaning like VE with it, is when you're going to Emerald Communion. You never want to Echo your Emerald Blossom, you never really want to echo reversion anymore, even though you are taking Golden Hour. It is just not as good, especially since you are taking Grace Period anymore. You're losing a lot of value of that. You really just want to make sure that you're planning out the echoes going onto either your Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom, which is why it was really important when I pointed that out to you, that I'm making sure before, like I have Dream Breath up, but I have to take the time to VE, TA, and then Dream Breath, and that's something that like you have to get into like a good habit of doing, which can be really annoying as well. So yeah, just to back that up. And then here is going to be my Dream Flight. I also just spent my Aberrus stacks. I only had 3, but I still wanted to spend them to get out some healing beforehand. I'm going to do that. And then what I'm doing right now is, so I have my TA and my Spirit Bloom ready, but I'm actually going to wait to press them until I have my Stasis, because in this fight specifically, I want to make sure that I'm putting my Stasis on CD to like on CD as fast as possible every single time to make sure that I get an extra one at the end. That's what I mean. Like sometimes you can like wait to line it up perfectly because there's not like always damage going on, or you're not getting an extra or something like that. It just depends on the fight. Like it is really timing dependent. So on this fight, it is like I just want to get it on CD as soon as possible. So I TA, I Spirit Bloom, and I'll probably sit here and hold it actually for an extra 3 seconds because my Dream Breath is coming up, and I pre-VE'd before I did any of that to make sure that I have my Call of Aberrus buff going into this. So I'm just going to Fire Breath to fill the time. I have the Devo stuff to get out, and then I Dream Breath, and then probably just going to spend it right away. Yeah. And then the next thing I'm doing is I'm looking at, oh, I have Emerald Communion coming up. And now this next like event isn't like the most amazing thing for me to Emerald Communion. However, at the end of the fight, I have like absolutely everything coming. Like I have a Dream Flight, I have a Stasis, I have a Tip to Scales, and I have a Rewind. And that's because this fight, like it does ramping damage, so you save everything for the end. So I actually end up usually using Emerald Communion at like a pretty like okay timing here. Like it definitely does a little bit of overhealing, but it heals the Stomp and then the Breath right after, so it's fine. It's not always like about the perfect usage, it's just about like having enough healing to get through something sometimes on this class. And then right now you just see me, I'm pressing Echoes. I'm going to Spirit Bloom this event as soon as it comes back up. And then right now what I should be looking at is that I have TA available in 3 seconds. I have Dream Breath available in 19 seconds. So this is where things get a little bit awkward, because if I VE right now, I'll lose my Call of Aberrus buff and have to VE again to get it again. Or like again, and then I'll waste all my Echoes. So this is where things get like a little bit awkward. So I think ideally here, what I should like do is just press Emerald Blossom, press Fire Breath, and then press VE and then TA. We'll see if I do that in the heat of the moment. It's a little hard to always be thinking like that. So I'm just pressing Living Flame on the boss, just DPSing. Pressing my Emerald Blossom. Okay, then I VE and then I'm going to TA. And I'm going to Dream Breath this. And I can either hard cast a Spirit Bloom right now, or I can wait a second, put out a TA, and then cast my Spirit Bloom. So it looks like I'm just going to choose to hard cast it. A little bit questionable, but like when you look at like I said, I just picked a random pull. This is not our kill pull, this is just a random pull. But I already made a video of our kill pull, so I want to use a different pull. So right here, my Spirit Bloom is coming back up. I also have my Stasis coming back up. And we're also about to get knocked back right now, and I have Tip to Scales. So I'm probably going to Stasis, Tip to Scales, a Spirit Bloom here. Or actually, I did a Dream Breath because I was about to lose my Call of Aberrus buff. Okay, I didn't even see that I VE before. And there's just going to be a Dream Flight, and I also rewound there as well. And then I have a Stasis set up, and the boss is about to enrage and we're about to die. Like I said, I don't think this was not our kill pull. And I have Aberrus stacks to spend. So I spent my VE, which means I'm probably going to detonate my Stasis soon. But yeah, that just gives you an idea of the cadence of how this class plays. It's not always so fast-paced as that, where you're pressing everything on CD on a fight like this is Scarn, which I'm also going to have a video on. There's a lot more, like, the damage is only every 30 seconds, so I spent a lot more time, like, actually, like, hard setting up, like, mini, like ramps for every single one, like, making sure I'm putting out, like, a lot of Echoes, VEing at the right time and stuff like that. But yeah, just give you a general idea of how the class is playing this tier for this general build. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage right now of the Emerald Blossom playstyle. So, you know, if they fix it here, maybe I'll have that for the guys as well later. But like I said, for the Emerald Blossom playstyle, main idea is you're just spending all of your essence on CD, on Emerald Blossom, just pressing Living Flame on the boss, and just Spirit Blooming and Dream Breathing on CD as well. Like, it's actually like really brain dead. You could pretty much play without frames because there's like no choices that you're really making except for casting Emerald Blossom, and most of the time you're just casting on yourself because you want to make sure that you're casting on a person who's standing in the group until you place yourself in the group. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something, and good luck with Frog this tier.